the background noise? It's funny, from years of DJing, I actually hear my left ear better. Hey, what's up, man? Can I get iced coffee? Yeah. Cool. Thanks. Later. Alright, cool. Who am I and what do I do? Well, my name is Wilis Johnson. I own a shop called Deluxe Cycles. It's currently a race level service studio and kind of a creative platform at this point. Been getting into manufacturing, componentry, and you know, creating a little clothing brand with it, just having fun. Trying to race a lot, trying to ride a lot. Yeah, so I started riding bikes kind of after seeing Rad. I really wanted a BMX bike. My mom couldn't afford one for me, so she got me this little Huffy, you know, like 5, 6 years old. And it had training wheels, and I wanted to ride without training wheels. I figured that was the best way to learn, and I couldn't figure out how to get them off. So I essentially just bent them up without any tools, and mom came home from work and shortly discovered I'd ruined the nice bike that she got me. Rather than disciplining me, she showed me how to take them off. So that was kind of the connection right away of like learning how to work on bikes. But yeah, I mean, I was just like, got into skateboarding after that. A lot of friends were into BMX, and you know, I would borrow their bikes and cruise around and just try to figure it out. But the whole time I was kind of skateboarding, and a good friend of mine had a paper out. I was making pretty good money and he was buying skateboards, so I went ahead and got a paper out. Figured I'd make a little money, and then I figured out you could double up and do 2 routes. And at that point I started making okay money and was able to save up and buy my own BMX bike. So long story short, I've kind of been riding a bike for a living for a while and figured out how to pay for bikes. Yeah, so I've been riding track bikes now, I guess, around 16 years. I kind of put that together today when I was thinking about the interview. Figured it might be a question, and yeah, I got my first like fixed gear conversion when I was 19. And a friend of mine owned a messenger company and just let me borrow his bikes, and I cruised around. I'm 35 now and I'm still riding the damn things around. Sick. Yeah, so I grew up in Olympia and I ran away from home at like 14 or so, and shortly afterwards skateboarding and writing graffiti and staying at friends' houses and just trying to figure it out. And a good friend of mine owned a messenger company in Seattle, and basically kind of vouched for me almost and got me a job. And I was at like 19, so lived in Seattle for 5 years, 5-6 years. And then, you know, I was racing some road, racing some track, doing the track bike messenger thing, having lots of fun, and kind of just going for it more or less. But it just became kind of a small city after a period of time. And, you know, I had a stepbrother who was living in Philadelphia, and he told me I could come visit him. And, you know, I had never even been to the East Coast, so I kind of just decided to move there and figured worst case, I could just move back to Seattle if things didn't work out. And, you know, Philadelphia is 2 hours away from Philadelphia. And I just kept coming to New York over and over and over for races, alley cats, eventually picking up work, and you know, just made more sense to move here culturally, creatively. Also, the riding was better, the racing was better, people were a lot fucking nicer. And that was almost 10 years ago to the month. I've lived in New York around 10 years. So I guess it makes me a New Yorker now, but half the time, you know, it just feels like home more than anything. And yeah, the riding scene here is good. You know, any kind of form of cycling you want to get into is here, and it's also pretty competitive. So if you're into racing and that kind of shit, you can literally race 4 or 5 times a week if you want. There's road crits, stage races, gravel, there's tons of mountains super close. Obviously the alley cat scene is very huge here. We also happen to have a pretty tight velodrome in Queens. If you want to go in circles fast, you can race that. Yeah, so when I first moved here, I got into racing and was super into alley cats and traveling to, you know, national events and, you know, various alley cats around the country. And, you know, track bikes blew up then. I'd already been doing it for a while. It was pretty fun. Thought I could be pretty competitive at that. But after a while, it kind of got boring. It was the same format in different cities and kind of the same shit. Kind of people just partying a lot and trying to be an athlete, trying to be fast, but really, you know, just kind of down for the party. And that's all fun and good. And, you know, community is very important. And a way to express yourself is through partying in a lot of ways. But after a while, I found it just kind of miserable. So I was actually working at a shop that had kind of a strong messenger community and alley cat background. And actually, a pretty solid dude from the local community was getting sponsored for racing cyclocross. And, you know, I enjoyed riding off dirt in the past. So I started racing cross a little bit and just started focusing on that more than the street stuff. And then as a result of racing, you gotta train, so you gotta ride a lot. I ended up buying a pretty fancy road bike and getting involved with the local scene and that vibe. And yeah, kind of what I found through messaging when I was 19, I kind of found later in life through competitive cycling, just, you know, became something to focus on, something that was driving me, something to like push yourself. It was also a lot of fun. And yeah, I raced cross around like 5 years consistently, got to pretty decent level, you know, like was able to hit the UCI field a little bit. I was way off the back and still had a ton of training to do, but felt good to even just be there. And kind of got into other forms of racing. So I was doing like mountain bike stuff, which was super fun. Started in the single speed kind of circuit. And then a friend of mine, Dan Chabanoff, was like, why don't you just get a real bike and get a geared bike and do harder racing? And that kind of struck a bell. So thanks, Dan. And I did, and started racing mountain bikes, and that was fucking rad. And, you know, from all that, kind of carried over a bit of fitness. So I was like, well, I like riding track bikes. Let me try to get on the track. Hit the local scene in Casina. There was kind of a cap, a limit of racing there. Like, you can get fast there, but if you want to get to a higher level in racing, you kind of got to go to T-Town in Pennsylvania. So then kind of led to that. And, you know, managed to do pretty well out there. So the past like 5 to 7 years just been nonstop, like training, racing, trying to run the business, and, you know, trying to go for it, have fun, and, you know, try to develop a brand in conjunction with that, which has now pretty much taken over my life, and kind of chilled out in racing a little bit as a result. But it's all good, it's all positive, it's just like redirecting energy more than anything. I had an idea, and I saved a bunch of money, rolled the dice, and kind of went for it. It didn't work, had a few backup plans, but I wanted to create a shop where everyone felt welcome. I wanted to create an environment where you felt comfortable coming into it and not overwhelmed by, you know, a traditional kind of bike shop format of hustle and flow, or being like, I don't know, almost judged as soon as you walk in. So by doing that, I put the shop on the second floor and just try to make it more of a private, like intimate experience that people felt comfortable. I also felt like there's a lot of options in New York, and I almost owed it to, you know, the customer coming into my shop to give him, you know, uninterrupted attention and uninterrupted customer service. So I kind of went for it, and ended up renting a small studio space in the warehouse and buying a bunch of tooling, and that kind of started the service side of it, where I was working on a lot of friends' bikes or fellow competitors or, you know, other athletes' bikes, because they knew I was a mechanic and seen me at races, and I guess for better or worse, you know, knew they could trust me to work on their bikes. And, you know, to my surprise, it worked. After about a year, I started to kind of, you know, brainstorm about branding, or, you know, made some shop shirts or like a hat or just stuff that people could buy if they were visiting from out of town or friends were visiting, and started to focus on almost a brand. And, you know, a good friend of mine, Alex from Look Studio in Brooklyn, was silk screening and created his own brand. And I kind of just went over to his shop and started bugging him, because we actually raced alley cats together like 5, 6, 7 years ago. I was just trying to get his advice on what to do and how to navigate it. And he started printing all my stuff, and at that point I thought it was pretty dope that everything was, you know, designed and printed and manufactured in Brooklyn and in New York. And once I found that avenue, just ideas just started to flow, and I started putting out a lot of designs, a lot of t-shirts, a lot of soft goods. So that was going good, the shop was going good, and I kind of just wanted to take it another step further on the componentry side, because what I was noticing is that components were really fucking expensive, and a lot of my friends that were either working class or racers or even messengers like couldn't entirely afford it. So if I manufactured it myself, I could cut out the 5 middleman and people could rock it. But that in itself was pretty humbling, and a lesson in manufacturing and timelines and structure and how to properly navigate it. So the shop's going good, brand's going good, componentry's going good. Fast forward a year later, my lease was up and the shop was jam-packed and a little tight. So at that point I had to find a new space. So whatever resources I had to put in a new lease. But yeah, I found a spot across from the Navy Yard, 3 times as big, more windows, raw brick, natural light, and just a really pleasant space to be in. So I kind of just elevated the current, or pre-existing rather, shop format and elevated it into what it is now. So that's kind of it. It's always continually growing, it's always continually advancing and progressing. I don't see that stopping as long as we're around, and, you know, this is my option in life. This is what I chose to do as a profession, and I take it very seriously, and I'm very passionate about it, so I plan on being around for hopefully a long time. Yeah, so, you know, Jason's a good friend of mine. He happens to own Affinity Cycles, and, you know, he was a friend of mine from a long time ago, and when I got into track racing, he was a familiar face and someone I saw at the track. And, you know, he was pretty welcoming, and it was, turns out he was pretty fast. So we actually started training together, and, you know, the guy he was training with at the time is the first, you know, non-Japanese person to be invited to race the Kirin circuit in Japan. Gibby Hatton, dear friend of mine still to this day. But, you know, I started training with him, and conversations kind of started, and I was working on a project to pay homage to rally racing and, you know, my childhood. My mom, growing up, raced rally cars, and her mechanic was this Italian dude who had Martini livery all over his workshop. And, you know, it's kind of my first concept of a livery and a memory of like a color palette and design. It was bold, it was beautiful, it was sexy, and, you know, I wanted to highlight that and kind of just pay homage to that time period in my life. And also, you know, my mom was doing well, but her health was kind of fading, and I just wanted to work on a project where it could raise proceeds. And the conversation actually started at Casino, where I was like, well, you have a pretty cool bike that's being made, you know, you want to work on a project together? And without any hesitation, he said yes. You know, it's good to have friends that put up with your ridiculous ideas and support you in them, and this is a prime example of that. So he was working on a project called the Anthem with Thomas from Horse Cycles, and the concept was, you know, a track bike, a racing level track bike made out of tubes that are manufactured in the US and welded in Brooklyn, and it was a dope project, and I liked the way the bike rode, so we did a run of 4 with those, and we actually debuted it last year for Red Hook Crit. And you know, the athletes I was sponsoring actually wore the whole livery. They wore the skin suit, they wore the kit, they were riding my wheels. You know, it was kind of like full circle moment of everything coming together, and it was dope. The girl who I sponsored, Colleen, won Red Hook Crit, you know, and that meant a lot to me because my mom used to race, and I thought it was really fucking awesome that a woman was wearing my stuff and won. You know, it was like truly paying homage to that period in time and that special time in life. So, you know, that project was awesome. It went really well, and I'm always working on concepts and liveries and capsules just by nature, by default. I just like working on stuff, and always have, from a lot of various projects. But you know, another one I had was using a classic bold color palette. It was kind of based off Baja racing and, you know, kind of a free time in California and Mexico and, you know, arguably parts of Europe as well. But you know, also bike companies in like the 70s used a similar livery, and later NASCAR and later other motorsports. So it's just paying homage to classic racing more than anything. But you know, we had talked about doing a custom run of Casinas, which is like their aluminum level track racing bike, and you know, I thought it held pretty true to the heritage. And you know, we worked on the project for, damn, I guess about 8 or 9 months of design, but it's the same principle that, you know, the kit would match the bike, and we even got, you know, a sponsor from Giro, thanks to Chuck. We're able to do some matching helmets as well. So it all came together. We did a limited run of 25 of these bikes. They're phenomenal. You can ride them on the street, you can do track crits on them, you can shred the velodrome on them. So, you know, I was able to pair and match the frame that we worked on with components that I'm getting manufactured as well. So from the wheels to the hubs, the titanium stem and bars, seat post, and now even the chainring with my good pal from Bespoke Cycles. You know, pretty much the whole bike is all deluxe branded or designed product, and it all came together, you know, with the help from Jason from Infinity to start with. So yeah, I mean, the bike rips. It's fast, it's fun, it's aero, and kind of a versatile machine. And you know, growing up riding track bikes, like was the principle of it, is that it's such a versatile machine. You can go on road rides on it, messenger on that thing all day long, race Alley Cat later, maybe after work you go to the velodrome and try to be fast and do some laps. Just creating a bike that fit all of that, because while I'm kind of out of the street scene, a lot of kids are coming up in it, and this would be a great bike for them to ride too, you know. Hopefully it can act as a stepping stone into other disciplines of racing or cycling, or, you know, progression in life, really. Kinda, like, I guess I've just noticed the New York cycling scene is like developing and growing, and it's all great, but kids are just kind of ripping each other apart and hating on everyone, and I just like to see it come together a little bit more. Like, you know, it's a very like surfer skate mentality, but you know, we're all out here riding, we're all here having fun, we're all trying to push each other. Just be fucking supportive of each other versus like rip people apart for minuscule minor things that don't really matter, you know. Just be positive out there, like be nice, just don't be weird. It's not that hard. you respect somebody, go say hi, shake their hand, ask them a couple questions. Most people are pretty chill once you get down to it. You know, if anyone has any questions about racing, come by the shop. If you haven't been by the shop, swing by. I'll make you a cup of coffee, you know? Just trying to be like a positive force in New York after so much shit getting so hectic and, you know, everyone kind of like separating versus just trying to work together. Well, coffee's almost done. I appreciate your time. Shout out to Bonks. Shout out to Terry. Yeah.
So we bring to a close the story of rigid control through the unceasing research and the highest quality.